What's going on, everyone? Josh Rzepka here, and welcome to another Mute Monday. Today, I'm excited to be sharing with you two different mutes from Merf Mute, the Gumby and the Heisenberg. Now, this video is not sponsored. However, both of these mutes, they were sent to me so I could check them out and create this video. So, Merf Mutes is the creation of bass trombonist Kyle Gordon and trumpeter Drew Femder. Now, starting off, here is the Gumby Mute, and you may be asking yourself, why do they call this the Gumby Mute? Well, it is because of this. Yes, this mute is totally squishable and it does not damage the mute. They say that this mute is the squishable, on-the-fly, adjustable, drop-proof, throw-proof, fast-changing mute of your dreams. Say that 3 times fast. And we're going to find out if it really is. The fact that this mute is squishy and flexible, it's not just some gimmick. It's actually integral to the design, and it impacts how this mute plays, and it's one of the main aspects that makes this mute so interesting and exciting. Since this mute squishes so easily, the more force you use to put it inside the bell, the further in the bell it goes, which is very interesting. Now let's take a look at this mute up close. The design, it looks pretty straightforward, but there are some interesting things happening here. If you look closely, just below these custom corks, you can see this mute actually gets a little bit narrower before opening up again. And on the top, you can see that it's got a curved cutout, which they told me they experimented with extensively, and it noticeably impacts the sound and playability of this mute. The bottom is perfectly flat, and they've got a nice minimalist logo, which I think looks really sharp. Now, another very interesting and novel design element of this mute is this threaded brass insert on the bottom. This allows you to dial the mute in even further by adding more mass of different materials. You can keep this vent hole open, or you can screw in one of a variety of different size screws, which all impact this mute differently. Here are all the different screws, starting with acrylic. Then we have anodized aluminum, and we've got nickel-plated brass, one in raw brass, as well as one in carbon steel. As these are all different weights and varying materials, they all have their own subtle effect on how it changes the sound and playability of this mute. Now, I got this mute this last spring, and since then they've added one more in stainless steel. I don't have that one, but currently there are 6 different screw options that you can experiment with on this mute. So if that sounds like a lot of variability, well, it is. However, these are the main things to keep in mind. If you put this in the bell gently, like a regular mute, it is going to play and sound like a traditional straight mute. However, if you use a little bit more force and you push it further into the bell, check that out, it is going to give you a softer, more muted and distant sound. Now, as far as the development of this mute, I had a chance to speak with Kyle and Drew at length a few times, and they told me that besides all the prototypes, figuring out the dimensions, the shape, they told me they tested over 30 different materials until they felt that they had a winner. And as far as this vent hole on the bottom, they tried different vent locations, facing inwards, on the side, on the bottom, in every area of the mute. So needless to say, a lot of R&D went into this mute, into trying to create something new for the trumpet world. Now, they tell me from the beginning, the idea with Merf Mutes was to make limited drops of mutes. That is, small production runs of each design, a little bit, and then they're done. However, they have said that if they have a design that really takes off, then they will increase and extend that production run. Now, they also told me that they were trying to create a mute for everyone. And by that, they mean they wanted to make a lot of different mutes, a lot of different unique mutes, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. And that, I think, is a fantastic philosophy, considering how diverse the musical world is, how many different styles of music there are, different playing situations we're going to find ourselves in. The trumpet world really benefits from having all of these new and unique mute choices. All right, so now let's check out this practice mute, which they call the Heisenberg, an obvious nod to the Netflix show Breaking Bad. So here they're using a plastic Erlenmeyer flask, which they have fashioned into a practice mute. Very fun. And as you can see on the top of this mute, they are using neoprene foam as opposed to cork. And on the bottom, they've got this wooden disc that is attached. There's a hole drilled through the center with a small brass tube that's been fitted inside, which allows the air to escape. And I've got to say, I really like the added touch here at the very bottom where they have laser engraved their name. Very sharp. So the reason that they created a practice mute was that Drew didn't like any of the ones out there that he had. Simple as that. He told me that he had around a dozen different practice mutes, and none of them felt or played the way that he wanted. So they started experimenting with some different designs and working to make something that they really enjoyed playing. And this clever design, this is what they ended up with. All right, that's enough talking about these mutes. Let's hear how they sound. I'm going to play this Heisenberg mute first, and then I'm going to play the Gumby mute in a number of different configurations, with it gently placed in the bell, as well as seated deeper in the bell. And then I'm going to demo it with all the different screws so you can hear what a difference each one of those makes. All right, so you've just heard the Heisenberg and Gumby Mute, and what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to start off with the Gumby Mute, which I think is a really fun concept and a very effective mute. I really dig how out of the box they were with this design and how they created something that is so adjustable. To be able to, put this deeper into the bell just by squishing it in further is a very unique thing, and it's pretty effective. Just from gently inserting the mute to really sticking it in deep, the difference in sound and feel is dramatic. And then when you add the versatility of all these different screws, this is a dream come true for those of you who love tinkering with your gear. As you could hear, playing it open, tight, and with all the different screws, they all sounded a little or a lot different. With and without the screws, it is very noticeable. And then with the screws, it gets a little bit more subtle. The front of the note, the articulation, the response, they all noticeably change. Now in the studio here, it might sound a bit subtle, but playing them, you're immediately going to find the one or two that you gravitate towards. And for me, I found that the nickel-plated brass one and then the raw brass one, those were my first and second choice. And I tend to like this mute most when I just kind of place it in the bell gently. But I have used this when I've really kind of squished it in deep into the bell. That can be really useful depending on the situation. However, for me, I did notice when I do that, it gets a little bit sharp, so I've got to adjust my slide a little bit. Now, I had the chance to use this mute extensively earlier this year while playing in the pit for a run of a show in downtown Chicago, Death Becomes Her. I was playing with my friend, an incredible trumpeter, Chuck Parrish, who was playing the first book, and both of us, we had this straight mute. We had a chance to take them through the paces in a real-world environment. We tried different screws each day, really dialing these in for our purpose, which ended up working very well in the pit. These are light and responsive, and the different screws allowed us to dial in that articulation for the pit, getting the balance of projection for the hall without overplaying the microphones that were right in front of us. So overall, I think this mute plays very well throughout the registers. It's got a nice even articulation and response. It's got great intonation, and as you can see, it is extremely versatile. It's also great that it's practically indestructible, which makes it easy to just toss in your bag, toss in your case, and you're not going to worry about it getting dented or smashed up. And imagine if this fell out of your bell, it's probably not going to make all that much noise when it hits the ground, and it's certainly not going to get dented. Now onto the Heisenberg practice mute. I think that this is a fun mute, and besides the fact that it looks cool on a shelf, it plays pretty well too. Now, this is not the softest practice mute that I own, nor the most compact, but I will say it plays well throughout the entire register of the horn. It doesn't feel stuffy, it doesn't have too much back pressure, and it is definitely soft enough to use in most any situation. I think it's got a nice articulation and response, which is always a bit of a challenge for me with practice mutes, as too much back pressure can really cause the response and clarity of the articulation. It just feels unfocused and delayed. Intonation on this, pretty solid. I had to pull out a little bit, which I find to be the case for practically every practice mute. And like most practice mutes, if you really lean into this and you play loudly, you're gonna get more volume and buzz coming through with the higher overtones coming through this little hole here. But I think that this is a solid option for many players looking for a mute that plays well throughout the registers, feels even, doesn't have too much back pressure, and reduces the sound levels significantly. Now, just a few days prior to filming this video, I saw that Merf Mutes announced their next drop, which is the metal Gumby for trumpet. And here's a picture for you to check out. I have not played this mute yet, but I am excited to try it out when I have the chance. Apparently they have 5, soon to be 6 different materials: aluminum, brass, copper, bronze X, and bronze Y. Not sure what that 6th material will be, but we're going to find out soon enough. I don't know all the details here, but I just wanted to share this as they just dropped these mutes. Appears that the top of this mute is the same as the flexible Gumby, but the bottom is spun metal. Very, very cool. And if you watched all my videos, or if we've chatted in person about mutes, then you'd know I am a big fan of mixing different types of materials when making mutes. I really think that it helps create a more interesting and complex sound. So I'm particularly interested to see and hear how these mutes play and how they sound. And I want to compare them here to this original, because I think that's going to be really very interesting. Okay, so there you have it, the Gumby and Heisenberg from Merf Mutes. Many thanks once again to Kyle and Drew for sending these along and for chatting so that I could fill in as many details as possible. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.